Story time. So who am I anyway? I've been posting these videos as of the time recording this for about 2 weeks now. And as you can tell, probably, hopefully, I'm very passionate about hockey. And I always have been. But as you've already probably surmised from the wheelchair, I have never played. So, what business do I have just talking about this team and about hockey like my opinion carries some sort of weight? Well, in a traditional sense, not much. But you see, that's the magic of the time that we live in. Anybody can get in front of a camera or a microphone and share their opinions to the world about whatever they feel like doing. But at the same time, you're probably curious. So today, we're gonna talk about how we got here. How I went from a spellbound 6-year-old child to a 31-year-old man with a job and future career prospects who, in his downtime, puts on a hockey jersey and talks about the Calgary Flames in the NHL. Are you ready? I'm not sure I'm ready, but it's gonna happen. So, here we go. I've always been in love with this game. My first memories of hockey go back to when the last ephemera for the Olympics were still up on Olympic Way when you were driving to the Saddle Dome. I was born as the glory days were ending in 1993. We were still a couple of years away from Theo leaving and a few years away from trading Joe Nieuwendyk for some guy named Jerome McGinley, who was pretty good at this whole hockey thing. But I was born into a time when there wasn't a lot to look forward to on the hockey front in Calgary. The last of our blown chances in 1994 happened when I was still too young to even perceive them. I have no memories of the glory days. My first Calgary Flames memories filled with Crazy Bread and Little Caesars Pizza back when they were a major concession tenant at the Saddle Dome happened in a time when the arena was half full and my parents and I could decide on a game day that we just felt like going to the Saddle Dome and we could sit wherever we felt like. Back then, even though I still had cerebral palsy and couldn't walk, I was small enough that my folks were strong enough to carry me up and down the mountainous stairs at the Saddle Dome to a place where we could sit in the lower bowl, which was half empty, and I could look up and see the banners from the 80s and wonder why our team never really seemed to win when I went to game. I was mesmerized by those banners from day one. I would point up at them and be like, man, we were a really great team. I would bug my dad with questions about the history of the team and why there weren't any new banners and why so many people didn't come to the games, because I always had so much fun at the games, even though the team sucked. And so I entered a phase where, as much as I loved the Flames, and they were my favorite team, I would cheer for basically whoever was winning when I was a little kid. And I got pulled in really for the first time at 8 years old when the 2001 Colorado Avalanche were going on their famous run with Ray Bork. And that's because my dad, even though he grew up in Montreal, and he's probably seeing this video, so hey Dad, hey Mom, hey to all my relatives who are probably watching this, because I'm gonna push it out a lot. My dad was a big Boston Bruins fan, and he loved and still loves Ray Bork. For a long time, there was a picture of Ray Bork up in my parents' bedroom and then in our basement. I'm not sure where that picture is now, but when I get into a bigger place, maybe I can convince my dad to have it up on the wall behind me with the Sutters here. Because that first season really captivated by a playoff run when I was 8. I connected with that Avalanche team because my dad connected with Ray Bork so much. And that old Gary Thorne call, which we didn't get up in Canada, but now I've heard a million times because it's up there with the most famous calls of all time. Of after 22 years, Raymond Bork's dream has come true. That call is one of my favorite early hockey connections because I went absolutely crazy for that Avalanche team. But that probably is the first year that got me thinking about someday. And we're gonna talk about someday a lot because that was the first year I felt like, why can't my team do that? Why is my team always missing the playoffs? Why are they always the bottom of the standing? And then, from 2002 to 2004, we had arguably the best player in the world in Jerome McGinley. He was winning Rocket Richards. He should have won Hart trophies. I don't know why Jose Theodore won. That team, as with so many around my age, in their late 20s or early 30s or a little bit older than that, that really solidified even more than it already had because the Saddle Dome was my local arena and we went to games every once in a while. That run, that team that wasn't supposed to do anything and made the playoffs out of nowhere with a bunch of people that everybody had considered as overachieving and who had been a third string goalie turning into arguably the best goalie in the world in Mika Kiprusoff. And I would go to bed listening to the Team 960 because I grew up back before Rogers owned basically 80% of the sports landscape, and the Team was a relatively independent sports station. And I would listen to Rob Kerr every day after school because he was doing what Steinberg does now. And I would listen to Peter Marr on the radio every game, and every game I would get more excited because maybe this was the time that it would actually happen, that we would actually make it to where everybody else seemed to go. And I remember this was back in the 1 or 2 seasons of Flames pay-per-view, and that run where we were finishing the season against Phoenix and Anaheim. And the Anaheim game, the last game of the year, was there was a chance that was gonna be where we clinched a playoff spot. And I begged and pleaded with Mom and Dad enough that if that were a clinching scenario, they would order that Anaheim Ducks pay-per-view game. As it turned out, we got the first, yeah baby, I could remember the game before that, when we beat the Phoenix Coyotes 1-0 and clinched a playoff spot for the first time in 7 years. And I was absolutely over the moon. I had the belief of a child. I was like, we're here. I didn't even care that Vancouver had won the division, because when you make it there, when you make it to the point where anybody can win, everybody gets a clean slate in the playoffs. And that moment I saw with Ray Bork only 3 years earlier could happen with my team. I thought they could do it, and my goodness, they actually proved me right. That 2004 Flames team beat 3 division winners before ultimately, officially losing that Stanley Cup to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But albeit it was in her till I die, because I was at that game, and I'll be honest with you, nobody at the game was talking about it until after, except for the fact that I was sitting in 103, 104 in the wheelchair section at that point, and I could see everybody on the 218 attacking and sort of jump up for a second, like maybe we had scored. And there was sort of a murmur over there, but because Jelly didn't actually celebrate or anything, nobody really paid it much mind. Plus the game was going to overtime anyway. And then of course, Martin St. Louis scores in double overtime of that game, and none of us can really believe it. And then 2 days later we end up falling just shy. After everything, after the Eliminator, after the shift, after all these famous moments, after Peter Mar's 3 babies against the Detroit Red Wings, it all went for naught. And then my imagination captured, of course, the next year, is the lockout, and I spend my days listening to 960 talking about labor negotiations that I didn't really understand. All I knew is that it meant, until some kind of contract was signed, there weren't going to be any games. And I now know that if that season had happened, maybe capitalizing on the momentum from the previous season, maybe the Flames have another shot at someday. But as it turns out, we all watched that press conference of Gary canceling the season, and he had every right to. As I said in my Defense of Gary video, the league needed a salary cap. And I didn't really understand why as a kid. I do now, because I don't think the team would be around today if the game had continued in the economic state it was. But that's not why we're here today. So, post-lockout, of course, we don't have a lot of playoff success, but I get a few more chances to experience playoff games at the Dome. And there's nothing like playoff games at the Saddle Dome. I miss them every year they don't happen. Another guy who's subscriber 1 for this channel and who's been the best friend since we were 12 years old and that 2004 run was happening. Every year I tell him how much I miss it when we don't make the playoffs, because there's nothing like it. And it lights me up every time sitting in the stands. There's an electricity that nothing else, except maybe the semifinal of the 2012 World Juniors against Russia, which I also had the privilege of going to, will ever match that in my mind. When things are good, that building is the heartbeat of the city. There's a lot of cynicism right now about the team being stuck in the mud and people just being okay with mediocrity. It's not that we're okay with mediocrity. It's that we want something to believe in. We want that feeling back. And I understand that wanting that feeling, even for just a little bit, can come across to some people as short-sighted, but it's 'cause anything can happen. So anyway, that mid-2000s to early 2010s period, there's not a lot of success, but I still have memories like that massive Corey Sarich hit against San Jose and other playoff memories and disappointments. This was the time when we started not being able to beat the Ducks, and boy did I start hating that Anaheim team, and I know a lot of you did. So we get to about 2010 and I'm in high school, and of course we all remember in 2010 the magic that happened with the golden goal. And I actually watched that game from a Model UN conference at the university, because in addition to being a hockey nerd, I'm also a nerd for politics and history. I remember jumping up, metaphorically, with about 200 other people my age, and having another one of those magical moments, and there were a lot of them in those 2 weeks, actually. I spent a few of those Vancouver 2010 days playing sick from school and watching all the events with my dad. Dad's gonna come up a few times in this story. And yeah, he's been a big part of my hockey fandom, even though he wouldn't necessarily call himself a Flames fan. I would argue that my dad's a bit more casual than I am. He'll freely admit this. And even though Boston's his primary team, I would argue he's, in the past several years, become more of a Flames fan because of how I bleed for this. I do. And I cried a bit when we traded Iggy in the next few years, and it was starting to feel like the days in the 90s there, although we were making the playoffs fairly regularly up until 2009. There was another drought of 6 years between 2009 and 50. And then the next team captured my imagination. It was Find Away Flames with a young Johnny, rest his soul, and Matt Stajan and David Jones. Another team that wasn't supposed to do anything and had a couple of bright stars. And Sam Bennett, my goodness, if we could have made that work, Sam. And that was a year where I actually, for the first time, didn't live in Calgary during a playoff run. I lived with that buddy I talked about earlier, and we made the drive twice all the way from Camrose to go watch playoff games, him and I, after kind of spamming the ticket lottery for the playoffs. Sorry, not sorry. We bent the rules and created a whole bunch of email accounts to spam the lottery because I wasn't missing a playoff run that wasn't supposed to happen. This could have been like 04 again. And this 15 team was the first time as an adult where they had captured the imagination of the city again, and where it really seemed like something special might be happening. And so making those 2-3 hour drive, one in the Vancouver and one in the Anaheim series, were some very, very special nights in our friendship that I'll never forget. And obviously we ran into another one of those moments that this team somehow always seems to run into, where there's a controversial goal that goes against us. And that was in Game 3 of that Anaheim series, after Matt Stajan had improbably beaten Vancouver and the Findaway Flames. They'd won a round for the first time since that 04 run, and we run into another one of these moments where it just doesn't bounce our way. But this time, Johnny Gaudreau comes down with 20 seconds left in that game and shelves it. And I wasn't at this one, and I was at work. I didn't see that game. I was working as a Walmart greeter. But the whole Walmart went nuts, and I got a whole bunch of texts from my buddy. And it's another one of those unbelievable moments that only this team can bring for me. Of course, we lost that series. We lose a lot of series. And then every other year, we seem to make it. 16, no go, but yes in 17. Swept by the Ducks. Screw the Anaheim Ducks. And then 18, nope. And then that 2019 team. Oh, I poured so much of myself in that 2019 team. After years of first round exits or being stuck against the Anaheim Ducks and being outmatched by them, that 2019 team, I believed that was it. We had finished first in the conference. We had depth. We were a contender. We were playing a wild card team in the Avalanche. And I was going to go to every game in those playoffs. We had figured out the lottery system again, and as that game 1, then game 2, and game 5, I was at every home game in that Avalanche series. And then after game 1, I was like, yes, 4-0. We win. We're on our way. This is the one. I believe. And we didn't win another game in that series. And at game 5, when they just didn't have it, sitting with that same guy, my best friend, and we were talking about religion in game 5 of the first round of the playoffs, because the game wasn't worth our time. And that was the first time that I felt a little broken. This was supposed to be it. We'd done everything. We were the top seed. The road to the finals was gonna go through Calgary, and I was gonna be there every game and there were only 3. And it ripped my heart out. But I was so captured, so enamored with this team that my friend and I, we decided that we were gonna go 50-50 and finally buy some season tickets. I was gonna be there every game, every single game. And that 2020 season, we weren't gonna be the top seed in the West again, but we were good. We were good. And I found out some tremendous news. My friend was gonna be a dad. He's now a father of 2 and hopefully 3 sometime in the near future. And I found out for the first time at a Flames game that season that my best friend was gonna be a father and I was gonna be an uncle. And then one of the last games we saw that season together was the goalie fight game, the true battle of Alberta. It had returned. There was hate in the rivalry again. And then COVID happened. After all of my fan journey, finally becoming a season ticket holder, which the thumbnail of this video was from a season ticket holder event where they had all the first year season ticket holders come down on the ice after scavenger hunt and meet one of the rookie players, because we were considered the 2020 season ticket rookie class. So each season ticket holder got paired with a rookie, and we got paired with Jacob Pelche, and I fell in love with Jacob Pelche. I was a bit devastated when that trade happened, even though I think it'll work out well for the Flames in the end. But I have this picture that had Jacob Pelche been one of the people to lead us to where we always wanted to go, I was gonna be sharing that picture of me and my buddy and his brother standing with Jacob Pelche on the ice at the Dome saying, I was there when it started. And it's around this 2019-2020 time that I start having this feeling creep in, and every year I talk about it, of when's it gonna be our turn? Because way back in that 2004 run, when I was 10 turning 11, and they lost Game 7, and I was crying my eyes out, Mom and Dad came into my room and said, it's okay, they're gonna win it for you someday. And I don't think even my best friend knows that. That's why I talk about someday so much when they miss the playoffs or get eliminated from them, because it means one more year of having to wait for someday. But I truly believe someday will come. And someday will come faster than I think some of us think it's coming. When it finally does come, I will be that Chicago Cubs fan, crying my eyes out, because I've been waiting over 20 years for the day to come. I can't imagine those poor Cubs fans waiting their whole lives, or the Leafs fans having to deal with everything they've had to deal with. As much as I don't like the team, I empathize so much with Leaf fans because they're waiting for someday too. And that 2022 team, I finally got my taste of it. After COVID, after not being able to use my season tickets for a year and then only being in half-full arenas again. That was something else as we were dealing with the restrictions. Johnny scores that goal, and my friend and his now wife are sitting next to me in the wheelchair section, and I start to cry. And it's because, in addition to my wait for someday, and the fact that this had been the first time I'd actually been there, been in the building to see them win a series. I'd seen them win playoff games, but I'd never been there for the handshakes, for the moment where it feels like they can do it. And I cried. But not only because of that, because of all the 20 years before that, but because some truly sad things had happened in my life in the time of COVID, which we won't go into here because that story's just for me. But the truly sad things that had happened, although canceled out slightly by the birth of my first nephew, had made it so that season, the Saddle Dome was the biggest source of joy and stability in my life. I could forget about the sad things that were happening in other parts of my life and just be a hockey fan. Just bleed for this. And this was bringing me joy. And I had put so much of myself into it. Again. And thank God for that team, because it was really bad in other parts of my life. And so, after that season, after that stupid Coleman kick-in goal, after that stupid gif of McDavid celebrating knocking us out of the playoffs and winning the first Battle of Alberta in modern times, I had to give up my season ticket so that I could live on my own and pay my rent. And I've been doing that since 2023. I still go to 7 or 8 games a year. Next year I'll be going to more because my neighbor has season tickets and has agreed to give me a share of them. Giving up those season tickets was one of the hardest adult decisions I've ever had to make because of how much this team means to me, because it got me through a particularly dark part of my young adulthood. And yet, here is it, 2025. Still waiting for someday. Still believing that it can happen here and that it will happen here, and getting to share my opinions and my story with all of you who care to hear it. Don't ever let anybody tell you that this is just a game, because it's not. I bleed for this. I hurt for this. Every year when it doesn't work, I cry. I turn into that 11-year-old kid crying in his bedroom, waiting for someday. So why do I go back every year? Because even though the end tends to hurt, this team has brought me so much joy, so many of my memories, the realization that I'm gonna be an uncle. It all happened at the Saddle Dome. Tuning in my old boombox radio to hear them clinch a playoff spot, or finally win a series, or start that run that ended one game 10 centimeters short, even though I think that puck was in, and the Parallax guys will never convince me otherwise. If it had been a bit more definitive, Someday might have been way back then, but all the joy, all the sadness, all the frustration comes from this jersey, and that's why I wear it every time I talk to you guys, unless news is coming down really fast. It's why I'll wear it even when I have no hair or all that hair's gray. And it's why when I have kids, I'm gonna take them as much as I can to Scotia Place and stoke their memories and their joy and their love for this thing that I love so much. And thank you to my mom and my dad and to every single one of you who I share these memories with and who I'll share that moment with finally when someday does come. And it will come. And I get to share those happy tears finally with you. And so, this year, finally, after being inspired by others who started sitting in front of their camera, talking about their favorite team, and having these big emotions all the time, I decided I was gonna widen my someday circle. Tell my story to whoever wanted to hear it. Share the joy, the pain, the frustration, my thoughts, my opinions with all of you. And I can't wait for opening day next season when we can forget about Minnesota tying a game with 20 seconds left and breaking my heart again. Opening day when someday is possible again. Or if the team does turn out to be bad, how lottery balls could take us finally closer to that day. And I can't wait to share all of the next phase of that journey with you. If you like what I'm doing, please like, share, subscribe, grow this community as we all wait for someday together. And as always, go Flames.